March 10, 1977. The investigating judge handcuffs Albert Spigari and takes him to the Nice, France, courthouse to question him. In the detective's perspective, Spigari remains a nobody and continues to work as a wedding photographer. They had no idea that they were holding the mastermind of the largest bank heist in French history, a hold-up right out of a novel. In actuality, it was an almost flawless operation that saw this silly-looking photographer disappear with more than $35 million in today's currency. How did he go from being a normal guy to being the most wanted man in Europe? Who was he actually, and how did a flawless bank job go awry over one small error? To tell you the amazing tale of Albert Spigari, the mastermind behind the largest bank heist in Europe during the 20th century, we modeled the entire thing. Early in the afternoon on July 19, 1976, a word spread around all French newsrooms that the Associates' Nice branch had been broken into during the weekend. Allegedly, millions of francs had been pilfered. Dozens of customers gathered in front of the business after hearing an alert on the radio. The normally peaceful streets of Nice were overtaken by panic. Everyone is attempting to learn more. Clients threatened to attack the director because they could not access their safes. People were terrified about going bankrupt. It is much quieter inside the bank. The discovery of hundreds of empty safes that had been cut with a blowtorch or cracked open with a sledgehammer has astonished investigators. The anticipated losses were 46 million francs, or 35 million euros in today's currency. How this occurred baffled the authorities. The equipment the robbers left behind, which shocked investigators even more, included a table, a gas stove, saucepans, bottles of wine, cans of ravioli, and slices of bread. This was the strangest assortment of materials they had ever discovered at a theft scene. On a wall, police discovered an even odd-scrawled placard that said, "No arms, no violence, no hate." The robbers left a message. They found a hole drilled in the wall in a corner. A police officer pushed through it. After a minute or so of crawling, he landed in the city sewers. The length of the tunnel was roughly 8 meters. The walls had been fully cemented by masons to keep them from collapsing and to make it easier for bags containing valuables and cash to pass through. Professional, well-planned performance. Investigators realized then that they were up against the greatest obstacle of their professional lives. Albert Spigari, his wife, and their dog reside in a modest country home on the outskirts of Nice. He purchased a camera a few years ago and taught himself how to take high-quality photos. With a wife, a dog, a rural home, and friends who all think he is a cool guy, he quickly rose to the position of town wedding photographer. However, nobody is aware of Albert's issue. Particularly at that time, the countryside in the south of France is serene, almost too serene for Albert. He turned to gaming in an attempt to find stimulation. An addiction swiftly developed from what began as sporadic gaming sessions. Albert, however, concealed more than just gaming from his group. He had actually always been problematic. Spigari was imprisoned as a young man. He was given a 5-year forced labor term in 1953 for looting an Indochina brothel during the War of Independence. He was a member of the Paratroopers Battalion and was active in far-right groups at the time. In 1962, over 10 years later, he became a member of the small, covert armed force that was fighting for French Algeria. He was sentenced to another prison term for possessing explosives and firearms as a result. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, which he completed at Marseille's Beaumet prison. After 3 years of release, he faded into obscurity. However, how did Albert get involved in the largest theft in France? One day, Albert picked up a book written by the English author Saligu about a bank heist in which the criminals used the sewers to break into the safe. Albert had his aha moment at that point. Days went by, but he was unable to forget the story from the book. Albert made the bold decision to attempt the unthinkable in March 1976. Stealing Nice main bank, a tactic that had never been attempted before. However, he had a strategy to investigate the options. Albert was aware that he needed to be near the action. He came over a newspaper ad one day advertising a commercial studio for rent a block from the bank. In order to study the bank's operations, he used every franc he had saved to rent the studio for a year as a shop for his photography employment. He opened an account and visited often, noting the number of employees and security personnel, the location of large deposits, and the noise level during business hours. He occasionally made deposits and occasionally withdrew funds to allay suspicions. Albert, meanwhile, was still unaware of the vault. One day, he remembered, a friend who had been employed at the bank informed him that there was no alarm system in the vault. The concrete walls, which were 1.8 meters thick, were intended to provide adequate protection. He went to the sewers next to the bank to determine whether his concept was feasible. He decided that it was feasible to excavate an access tunnel from the sewers to the vault after spending several nights exploring. But one individual could not accomplish such a task. Spagyri needed more than just a team. 6 guys connected to a French paramilitary group were among the gang of petty criminals he enlisted. Most of the men were from Marseille. To avoid being recognized in Nice, they had to be from out of town. In early April 1976, the crew began their excavation. The distance between the vault and the sewers was roughly 10 meters. The crew had to remain extremely quiet, even though that is not a long distance to dig through. The bank's interior had poor acoustics during the day, so any disturbance from the street would be interpreted suspiciously. The 2 security officers would spend hours talking outside during the night, so any disturbance could shut down the entire operation. The crew had to painstakingly excavate in complete silence using just basic hand equipment. They positioned hundreds of meters of electrical wires from Albert's studio to illuminate the tunnel, employed inflatable mattresses for rest periods and rubber rafts to prevent water from rising. They even covered the floor with carpet. 1 centimeter at a time, the workers dug for months at night. They arrived at the vault after 3 months. Spagyri and his colleagues stole into the bank's vault on July 16, 1976, over the long weekend of Bastille Day, when most residents were on holiday. They stole an estimated 46 million francs worth of cash, securities, and valuables over the course of hours spent searching through 371 safe deposit boxes. At the time, it was the biggest heist in bank robbery history. Each of the 6 guys left the scene in the same manner as they entered, leaving a note for the media and detectives. Albert Spagyri left his cronies to go out to supper. For the time being, the scheme was a success. Albert Spagyri made the decision to divorce his wife and go for the United States shortly after landing the bank position. He seized the chance to live the high life, including lavish dinners, fashionable shopping trips, and a large property in Florida. Ultimately, nobody had any suspicions about him, at least not yet. However, 3 months later, he made his first significant error as a result of his constantly growing ego. In addition to lining his own pockets, he planned this break-in to demonstrate his abilities. Persuaded that the CIA could be interested in his profile, he visited the agency's offices one day and introduced himself as the mastermind behind the century's biggest theft. But nothing went according to plan. A person on Interpol's most wanted list was not someone the agents planned to hire. They informed the French police about Spagyri. Their message was initially ignored. The leader of the Marseille's mafia, Gaëtan Zamba, was then being pursued by French detectives. Spagyri briefly managed to get through the net. Unexpectedly, 2 of his accomplices were captured a few weeks later while in possession of gold bars from the Nice theft. After being questioned in great detail, they brought up Spagyri's name. All of this was going on back home, but he was unaware of it. He flew to France to see friends and family, but when he got back, he was detained right away. However, this is not where the narrative ends. After 5 months, he escaped by jumping out of a window in front of the judge because he was having a hard time handling his confinement while being questioned. He landed on the top of a car 4 stories below, bounced, and landed without getting any scratches. Then he sprinted to a motorcycle that was waiting, got on the back, and ran away. Officially, Albert Spagyri was on the run. The story captivated France as a whole. The public was drawn to his strange behavior, particularly after it was revealed that he had compensated the owner of the automobile he had fallen on with 5,000 francs. Spagyri became known as an honorary bandit. But French journalists continued to emphasize the opposite. They said that he carried out this crime in order to support the claims of a number of far-right organizations that were openly pro-colonialist. Using a forged passport, Spagyri was able to flee to Argentina, where he lived in luxury on a huge estate he had purchased with his portion of the spoils. In order to travel from one nation to another without ever being questioned, he used the chance to change his appearance, grow a beard, and have plastic surgery done there. He traveled to Italy, Spain, Chile, and Brazil. As though nothing had happened, he even took a detour to France. He briefly resided in a tower block in the Parisian neighborhood of Pau. Spargari also used his time on the run to create The Sewers of Paradise, a widely popular book that was later made into a movie in 1983. He even interviewed French journalist Bernard Pivot while wearing a wig from his hiding place in Italy at the time. Even though Spargari was ecstatic, justice had not forgotten about him yet. He received a life sentence in prison in absentia. 5 of his collaborators, whom he never condemned, were apprehended. They received lighter sentences, just 8 years in prison. Over the course of these 12 arduous years, Robert managed to elude all police pursuits. Apart from the police, of course, his case had lost interest by the end of the 1980s. Devastated and abandoned by everyone, Albert attempted to bargain for a sentence review in 1988 in exchange for his return to France. He reached out to famous attorney Jean-Louis Peltier to do this. Contrary to all forecasts, however, the French legal system firmly declined. Still, it was hardly his largest issue. He discovered that his lung cancer was incurable at the same time. Albert Spargari passed away in Buno, northern Italy, on June 10, 1989. He was only 56. A tragic demise for someone who aspired to be a legend, devoid of honor or crown. If you enjoyed watching our content, give thumbs up to video, it help us reach more audience. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any video.